Welcome to the sound at the start of your weekend. This is the NTT20 betting show brought to you by AK Bets. Today am your host, George Ellick. I'm delighted to be joined by Nick Goff. And I can imagine listeners are thinking, where is Ali Maxwell? They know that he had his first baby like 10 or 11 weeks ago. People who've been through that know that it's a difficult time. You know, has he lack of sleep? Has he not slept for a couple of days? Not going to tell you exactly where he is, but let's say it's naps and not nappies. It's hitting sixes rather than clearing up sick, bottles of wine and not milk, and golf courses rather than baby massage courses. So what I'm saying is, don't feel too sorry for him. How you doing, Goffy?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. It's nice to just come back for a one-off cameo. I wasn't going to ask where Ali was, none of my business. But if he's off enjoying himself, it's a game for a little bit of ribbing, isn't it?
All I'm going to say is I don't want to stick the knife in too much because I might be doing something similar in about 5 weeks, and you might be coming back on the show. So
Ali, off you go.
Ali is fine and having a great time and enjoying parenting. But he's not here this week. We give him a week off to enjoy himself, and that means Goffy is here to join me as we look ahead to the weekend's fixtures. This is FA Cup fourth round weekend, which means we've got a smattering of games within the EFL, and of course we've got the FA Cup to look into as well. So we're making picks across those. Even the FA Cup games we're looking at will have a very much an EFL feel to them. And as I say, this is sponsored by AK Bets. I would definitely sign up for an AK Bets account if you haven't done already. You know, it's February now. You've had your chance to. Again, they are pushing all the prices out to either match or be the industry best in the market on all of these selections at the time of recording. So make sure you do sign up for an account with them. Remembering that gambling does come with risk. Visit begambleaware.org if you want to read up on those risks. Please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly. This is a show for 18 and overs only, please. But let's get into our naps. Last week was a rarity where Ali and I both got our naps up. I mean, that is this season. It used to be a regular occurrence, but this season we've had few and far between those kind of successes. I had Shrewsbury to beat Mansfield at 5-2. They were 1-0 down and a man down, and I had torn up my betting slip before they came back and won that 1-2-1. Ali with a sharp pick with Coventry to beat Swansea away from home. He also nailed the Sunday game with Bristol Rovers beating Peterborough, so he had a very good time of it indeed. So nothing to live up to here, Goffy. What's your nap?
Yeah, so sort of tricky week. I looked through the Championship and there's not a single bet I like in the Championship at all. And in League One, I thought that the pickings were very slim. As we will come on to one game in League One, but nothing of nap standard in League One either. So I'm concentrating on League Two. And my nap is a bet that you've made famous, the win to nil, and it's Bradford City at 6-4 to win to nil against Harrogate. Even this, it wasn't one I needed to sort of convince myself a little bit because Harrogate have been playing a little bit better of late. I know from speaking to you, you were sort of impressed with a couple of Harrogate performances. But when I've dug into them, the 1-1 draw against Crewe, they weren't the better side, and Crewe are just having a little dip of their own at the moment. They played well at MK Dons away and got beat 2-1, but that's not the feather in the cap that it used to be either. No one's struggling against MK at the moment. All's not right there. So I've landed on Bradford, who have been, throughout the winter, not just cementing a top 7 chance, but actually put themselves in an automatic promotion race. Last time out, they were very narrow 1-0 losers at AFC Wimbledon. A very sort of even game, and Wimbledon are a good team at this level, so no disgrace at all. Before that, 3 consecutive wins to nil. 2 against lowly sides, the bottom 2, Morecambe and Carlisle. Also, 1 obviously against Walsall. The start of Walsall's little blip was the 3-0 at Bradford. The last 6 games, I've got them in the top third in the league for XG against. And even in home wins like the Grimsby 3-1, they only conceded about half a goal XG, so the win to nil is very unlucky there. So I think Bradford are defending very well. I think there's some doubts over the actual form of Harrogate's supposed improvement. I still think they're a bottom 5-6 team who just maybe made it look slightly like they weren't. And if your theory is accurate about there being a slight incorrect skew between the win to nil and the win and both teams to score split in any win price, and I wonder if that's, by the way, because win and both to score is now so popular, bookies are slightly short there, and then your win to nil price is perhaps slightly too big. I've given that zero thought and look at actual stats. So just a theory I'm chucking out there on a whim. But if there is a reason why win to nil has been slightly overpriced in some of these situations, you've done well out of it in recent months. And 6-4 here for a team that are 4-6 to win the game and don't concede many goals must be okay.
Yeah, until winter continues with Goffey. Spoiler alert, I've got a bet coming up in that game and both of us can't win. So let's see how that goes later on. And last time we did this on this show, I had a 0-0, you had a Wrexham win, and Wrexham won thanks to a wind-assisted goal direct from a corner. My nap is in the Championship. Yeah, galling to me to hear you say there's no bets in the Championship, because both my nap and my next best are in the Championship. And I toyed between Sunderland to win to 0 at home to Watford as being my nap, but I landed in the end on Sunderland -1 at 6-4 as being my nap. Now, Dave Walker, friend of the pod, star of the England pod, is actually on this call producing and editing this podcast, and he's a big Watford fan, and I've spent quite a lot of time with Dave in the last few weeks, and it's fair to say that his attitude towards Watford has gone from giddy enthusiasm, wondering whether or not they can break into the playoffs this season, maybe be a Premier League team next season, to despondency and anger and frustration around a terrible transfer window where Watford transpired to lose key players, not replace key players, bring in injured players, and there's no denying that Watford at the current time of recording are a far, far weaker side in every sense, not just in terms of the players, but also the performances themselves, than they were before the January window opened. And it feels like a massive bungle from the Pozzos in terms of being in a very, very strong position where they could have capitalised on that. And if anything, they've gone the other way. They were terrible in the 1-0 defeat against Norwich on Saturday last week, where Vakun Bayo was sent off for a ridiculous kind of throat shove within that game. That means he's out. They don't really have anyone that can play up front in his absence. Rocco Vata would be an option, but it looks like he's going to be doubtful. Something that Tom Ince is going to be leading the line for a Championship side away at Sunderland, possibly. Kwadwo Bar is still ruled out through injury. Festy Ebesele was recalled by Udinese, has now been sold to Turkey. You know, you're looking at Chakbatadze as being kind of the one positive within this side, a player who's destined to play at the top level relatively soon. But you take him out, and it's a desperately poor 11. Added to the fact that Tom Cleverley is seemingly on borrowed time. Like, it looks like he's a dead man walking at Watford. There were rumours a couple of weeks ago that the club are looking to replace him. I'd be amazed if he isn't replaced at some point in the next few weeks, which would be ridiculous, because in my mind, they were a team who should have been fighting off relegation this season, and due to Cleverley's own good work, they've ended up being at the top end of the table, and he'll probably end up being a victim of his own success. And they travel to a Sunderland side who are buoyant off the back of a 3-2 win against local rivals or local team, whoever you like to believe. Middlesbrough, it felt a bit like a derby, I must say, on the night itself, thanks to Ryan Giles' own goal in what was a really end-to-end game. And what I've really taken out of that performance, and even the 2-2 draw against Argyle in the previous game, is how good they are from an attacking standpoint at the moment, where even when they were very poor against Argyle, their worst performance of the season by miles, they still carry a real attacking threat. And that is because in Wilson Isidore, I think they have just bought a player who should be a Premier League starting striker now. He's only 24 years of age. His movement is unbelievably good. His ball striking ability is absolutely incredible. I haven't seen a striker be able to strike a ball with both feet like Isidore can. And then I have Enzo Lefebvre, who we know is a player that should be playing in the Championship. He is a top flight player, has been that previously, and they've only been able to attract him due to his relationship with Régis Le Bris. Those two should definitely have a sitcom in their post-football career. But it's a Sunderland's attacking threat. I think it's very obvious. They'll be, having had such a good home record so far this season, they'll be desperate to put the Argyle result right, and they still carry a massive chance of finishing in the top two. So, to my mind, if Watford put in a performance like the one we saw against Norwich, and there's no real reason to think that they won't, I think Sunderland should win this, and win this very, very comfortably. And the -1, anything odds against, kind of appeals to me. So getting 6-4 feels like a decent price. What's the next best?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Carlisle United because it's all change and panic stations. They're in the news. It looks like they've brought in about 11 new players and then fired the manager, which, you know, on the face of it, is not how to run a football club, is it? You know, were they all Williamson's choices? Were they all bought with his style of play in mind, or was this more of a sort of supermarket sweep and anyone who might be able to help them get out of this mess was considered as possible for coming in. Well, Mark Hughes is in now. Now, that surprised a few people. He surprised a few people when he even took the Bradford job 18 months ago or whatever, 2 years ago, whenever it was, because he's managed at the highest level. He obviously doesn't need to be there financially. And he's back again in 91st place in the pyramid. He must only be doing it because he loves it and because he wants to be there and he actually wants to be a part of a relegation battle, or he wouldn't be bothering. So I've seen mentions both ways about whether Hughes is a good appointment or not. Jury's out on that, but one thing you have to say is that he's going to roll his sleeves up and give it his best shot, because it might be his last chance to manage a Football League club if it doesn't work for him. They have got absolutely no time for new players to settle in, bed in, and a new manager to bed in. They've got to hit the ground running. Otherwise, by March, they might be almost down. So this new manager bounce thing is always a buzz phrase. And sometimes results do take a turn after a new manager comes in. But as savvy bettors, we're all acutely aware that sometimes it just doesn't. And a manager changes and results don't change because the team just aren't good enough. In this case, we've got a whole new set of footballers. So even the form of everything they've shown in recent weeks is kind of irrelevant. It's going to be a different set of players out on the field with a different coach and a different style of play, because he's not going to play Williamson's way, is he? So what we need to do as punters is try to assess when new managers come in, whether there might be a change in results because the players have got sick of the last guy, or results were just going to change anyway because the previous manager just got unlucky. Sometimes, teams sack managers when results are bad. The results are either bad because the team are bad, or they've been unlucky, a string of results that they didn't really deserve. That can happen, and then results will change anyway. In Carlisle's case, it's not really that, but there's another reason why results might change, and that's all of the new players. In this particular example as well, we've got the added layer of Grimsby being the opponents, who sit 9th in the league, but their season-to-date numbers suggest a team who are overachieving right now and likely to fall back into mid-table rather than be in the playoff hunt come May. They won a tight game at Bromley last week, and that's not saying anything lightly there. To go and win at Bromley's good, but it was a close game that could have gone either way on chances. They were well beaten by Barrow a couple of weeks ago, who aren't really beating anyone at the moment. Only drew at home with Chesterfield, who had a load of players out that day. So Grimsby's form for me is not a team in a playoff contention. And I just wonder whether this is the right opponent for Mark Hughes in his opening game with all the new players he's got to come in, and whether people might be looking at this from 5 o'clock and think, wow, how did that happen? New manager bounce. And it wasn't really that necessarily, but that's what it'll be put down as, isn't it? So at 13-8 draw no bet, they're a chance I think are worth taking.
Yeah, chance worth taking. Carlisle at Grimsby Town, Mark Hughes, and that fabled new manager bounce. Goffey's next best. My next best is again in the Championship, and it's Bristol City to beat Swansea at 5-6. Swansea at the moment are in a tailspin, and I think the market probably can't quite catch up quick enough as to how bad they are. Their results in 2025 been a 4-0 defeat against Pompey away at Pompey, which seemed to set the motion for the wheels to come off. And then the 3-0 defeat at local rivals Cardiff was really the moment where they started careering off the road. A 1-0 draw against West Brom before that, their only point so far this calendar year. 2-1 defeat against Sheffield United, a 5-1 defeat away at Norwich. And then they rolled over on Saturday and were beaten 2-0 by Coventry. They travelled to a Bristol City side who, at home this season, their record against the worst teams in the league is absolutely exemplary. They've played all but 5 of the bottom half teams so far at Ashton Gate, and they've won all but 2 of those. They drew 1-1 with Crystal Palace, they drew 1-1 with Cardiff, they beat Millwall, they beat Oxford, they beat Portsmouth, they beat Derby, they beat Luton, and they beat Plymouth Argyle. It's funny because these have generally been the games where Liam Manning has struggled in his career so far against teams at home they're anticipated that they're meant to beat, because they've been a side who've struggled to break down a low block. But this season, he seems to have fixed that. And they are now, probably because a lot of work in the summer went into bringing in the requisite players needed in order to break down teams who play this way, they're now a winning machine effectively at home against these kind of sides. The fact that Swansea play, as we know, Luke Williams will get them to set up a pretty high line, looking to dominate the ball. Only I think plays into their strengths even more, where players like Mehmeti and Twine, Armstrong off the bench possibly, just thrive when there is space in behind to attack into. Effectively, you've got a side here in Bristol City who this has been their bread and butter all season against one in Swansea, where I think right now, if you were to draw up a list of teams into order of how they're playing since January the 1st, Swansea would have to be in the bottom 3. And they're not being priced up as if they are a Plymouth Argyle, for example, or a Portsmouth on the road. And I think they probably should be. So, yeah, the 10 to 11 out of Bristol City seems like a very obvious one. And sorry, the 5 to 6, I should say. And I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, and I'm going to take it. For anyone looking to sign up to AK Bets, you can use promo code NTT100. The link is in the show description. If your first bet is an accumulator on football with a minimum of 4 selections, AK Bets will boost the profit gained on that initial bet by 25% in the form of a free bet up to a value of £100. Further T's and C's accessible on the website. Click the link in the description to take advantage of that sign-up offer. On to goal scorers now, and you had some success with a tactic backing 2 centre-back goal scorers in the same game, and you're looking to repeat the trick.
Yeah, we did well with Omar Shomi, didn't we? Around the Christmas period, scored a couple of times for us. And in one of those games, we bet 2. So we're coming back to a game here that you've just mentioned, the Bristol City game. On my list for Championship teams, I thought I'd be with this week were Bristol City at home to Swansea and Norwich at home to Derby. The 2 teams I wanted to be against at the moment are Derby and Swansea. And they sort of opened 10 to 11, close to even money each, and both have been back during the week. They've just gone slightly off my radar. I still quite like your Bristol City at 5 to 6, but it just moved an inch too far for it to be on my shortlist for today. But I will get with Bristol City a different way here with the goal scorers, because Swansea City, on my set-piece stats, not only do they concede in the last 8 games more set-pieces than any other team in the league, the XG per set-piece allowed by them is also the highest in the league. So they concede the most set-pieces, and then they defend them the worst. So it's a very much a team that have to be on your radar for opposition set pieces. And in Bristol City, we've got 2 6'4" guys at the back in McNally, Luke McNally and Rob Dickey, both 6'4", both score a fair, over a prolonged period. So Dickey scored 1 in 10 for Bristol City from 60 odd games, 6 or 7 goals for them, and McNally 1 in 7 for he's on 2 or 3 this season, I think already. They've both scored since the Christmas period, 1 over Christmas against Portsmouth and 1 in January in a 1-0 win over Sheffield Wednesday, maybe. But they've both scored in the last 6-7 weeks. They come up for every single set piece and corner against a team that don't defend them very well. I do think Swansea are going to have nightmares with two, not 1 but 2 6'4" guys to deal with here. They're both 10 to 1 to score, so half a point on each of Luke McNally and Rob Dickey to score any time for Bristol City.
Lovely stuff. McNally and Dickey, 2 Oxford legends. You're putting up to score there. Right, to my goal scorer. This is the one that goes against your nap. I'm putting up Josh Marsh to score any time for Harrogate at Bradford. You've backed Bradford to win 2-0. So sadly, there's no way we can both win here. But Marsh, it's interesting because you are right. I kind of looked at Harrogate's recent form, and it's just from an attacking perspective where they seem to have played against MK Dons. They had 22 shots away at MK Dons. And I definitely take your point that, being good against MK Dons at the moment isn't particularly impressive or important because they are so poor. But even so, to go for Harrogate to go away from home to a side who are still kind of at worst must be lower mid-table and have 22 shots is relatively impressive and rack up a pretty big XG number. Similarly, they created a decent number of good opportunities against Doncaster, one of the best teams in the league, and against Crewe. So, from an attacking perspective, they are creating opportunities at the very least. And in Simon Weaver's Harrogate, we've seen them consistently be a side that fluctuate massively in terms of what they are. At times they are pretty hapless and concede a lot of goals, but at times they've been a pretty good attacking side and go through these runs of very high-scoring games. It wouldn't be a massive surprise to me if we're on the brink of one of those, given the way they're currently performing. And in March, you've got one of the biggest statistical anomalies basically in the whole league, where he was a middling Harrogate, League 2 striker. It wasn't necessarily getting too many opportunities, wasn't scoring that many goals. I don't really know what's changed. Since Christmas, he has been on a mad run of taking loads and loads of shots. If we look back since the Fleetwood away game on the 29th of December, he had 5 shots in that game, a shot against Salford, then 4 against Barrow, 4 against Cheltenham, 2 against Colchester, 2 against Donny, 7 against MK Dons and 3 against Crewe. Effectively, you look at the XG numbers and they're not particularly impressive. You know, he's taken quite a lot of bad shots within that. But even so, when you've got a side who, in my mind, are relatively consistently, albeit not picking up points in games, but are creating good crossing opportunities, he will be their striker. He is the one who's getting the chances, and he's 9-2 to score any time. You'd have to make a pretty strong case to me to suggest that any starting striker who's getting that many shots off within games isn't valued to score at any time at 9-2. So that's the way that I'm playing this one for my goal scorer. Couple of long shots now. Where are you looking for yours? Into League One, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm going into League One, and a team, the market, I've been absolutely desperate to write off all season in Reading. The owner situation has been appalling. It could have broken them, but it hasn't, and it seems to have sort of galvanised them and put everyone in it together. When Sellers left, that was meant to be the end. He's off to Hull, and the new manager, that should have been the end of Reading. Smith and Bindon have gone in this window. This should be the end of Reading, but they never seem to stop causing little surprises here and there. They beat Bolton last time out, and they go to Huddersfield, who is sort of a 4-9, 2-5 shot to beat them. They should be in the automatic promotion race, but now they're 11 points behind Wycombe, and they're only 4 clear of Charlton, Bolton, and guess who, Reading. So it seems to me that Huddersfield, come the spring, are going to be more in a race to keep hold of their top 6 place than they are into an automatic one. And anytime Huddersfield Town are in this league, they obviously expect to be in a promotion battle and challenging for automatic, and that looked like they would be. And suddenly they're quite underwhelming. How do you go 3-0 down at Northampton? I don't know anyone in this league does that. They didn't even score in the 2 home games before that against Bolton and Birmingham. Things, the fans must be getting a little bit restless and looking over their shoulders of the top 6, and certainly not looking at the top 2 now. So we all know what Reading's issues are. We see the prices they go off every week, and the market is writing them off. We know they're obviously better at home than they are on the road, and they can sometimes just sort of not show up a little bit on the road. But all of that is very much in this price on Reading, around 11-2, 6-1. They've got absolutely nothing to lose, and they go and play a team who have got everything to lose. And the price here is big enough for us to take a risk that it is a going day for Reading. They do turn up, and that they don't miss the 2 players that have left last week. So Reading for me is a long shot.
Reading, Goffey's long shot. I'm going to the FA Cup for my long shot, and I'm putting up Birmingham City to beat Newcastle at 5-1. A few reasons for this. Last night, on Wednesday night, we saw Newcastle come against Arsenal in the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg, and they were exceptionally good. And it was one of the biggest results probably in their recent history. It means they're in the Carabao Cup final. Finally, Newcastle might be winning a trophy. And I think the flip side of that is that suddenly the FA Cup becomes quite a lot less important, where does it become more of a distraction? They still have a big campaign in the Premier League in order to try and force European qualification. And as we saw from Arsenal's performance last night, forgive me for a bit of Premier League analysis on this show, but often after a really big win and a resounding win in a big game, it's often followed by a bit of a dud performance. Arsenal, unbelievably good against Manchester City last weekend, come to Newcastle a little bit half-cooked, and they were the worst. They were worse off in the game itself. It wouldn't surprise me massively if Newcastle rested players, if Wilson came in for Isak, for example, and they were just a little bit half-baked after some, you assume, pretty big celebrations on Wednesday night, celebrating their progression to that Wembley final. They've got a pretty difficult team here in Birmingham that they're up against. I've been quite keen to pour some cold water on Birmingham being the best League One has ever seen, and other things purely because from an attacking standpoint, I don't see them creating the relentless amount of chances that we often see other teams do, such as Ipswich a couple of years ago, for example. But there's no denying that from a defensive point of view, they are exceptional, especially at St Andrews, where they're averaging 0.57 non-penalty expected goals per 90. Now, to put that in context, Burnley, who are being labelled as basically the best defensive side of all time, also average 0.57 expected goals against per 90 when playing at home. Leeds, who I think are the best defensive side we've probably ever seen in the Championship, averaging 0.37, so comparable there. And you've said in the past, when it comes to cup games, Goffey, that it's very hard for the market to basically assess how good a team is compared to another team in another league. And with Birmingham in particular, I think that's very, very true. Where how do you rate Birmingham? How do you rank Birmingham, especially at home? I would say they're at the very, very least a mid-table Championship side, and possibly better than that. And I'm not necessarily sure that the 5-1 for them to win this game in 90 reflects both the the quality of the side, but also how important a game it is for them, and how this is probably a game that the Newcastle can afford to roll over and lose. Coupled with the fact that I think for Birmingham and their owners and the ambition that they've got, this is live on terrestrial TV on the weekend. This is a massive opportunity for them against a side that just a couple of days before had qualified for a Wembley final, to show everyone what they're all about and to show what they're going to be next season in the Championship, where I'm sure they'll be thinking and hoping that they can do in Ipswich and challenge at the top end yet again. So, yeah, keen on that 5-1 about Birmingham, especially in a game where I just don't really think Newcastle will create a great deal against them, because Birmingham is so strong. And the assumption, of course, is that they will. And if this, if the goal line is driven down, then that always means that the outsider within the game, can be a bit of value. So hopefully this goes better than me putting up Salford a couple of weeks ago against Manchester City. 5-1 about Birmingham is my long shot for this one.
I would have Birmingham pegged about 10th or 11th best in the Championship, sort of around the sort of Sheffield Wednesday level of team, and maybe they would be a little bit shorter here. So, I think it's a decent shout.
Love it. Because it's FA Cup weekend, rather than doing our unders fourfold, because these FA Cup games, these cup games can often go a bit crazy with regards to goals. We're doing an over 4.5 goal double within the FA Cup. Goffy, people are going to have to wait until Monday night for your selection.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Exeter Forest as the over 4.5 game. Forest have just been involved in 2 wild Premier League games ending 5-0 against and 7-0 for. They're bound to make some rotation here, you would think, given they find themselves in the Champions League battle. And if that rotation comes defensively, especially, that will give Exeter a chance. Exeter can find the net. They're no strangers to scoring goals, but managed to ship a bundle in their last home game. And Forest, we've seen in the Premier League what they're like on the counter-attack. That'll be a major issue. Exeter just won't be able to deal with, will they? If Forest play a few of their counter-attacking gems. So, as we always say with these over 4.5, you need to get an early goal. It would be great to get an early goal for the dog, and turn this into, hopefully Forest will change a few at the back, a rotated team, and we get a 3-2 or a 4-1 sort of game and cop and overs.
Yeah, similar kind of idea in terms of the back and forth nature. I've gone for Coventry against Ipswich, 2 more closely matched teams. But a game where I'm pretty sure Frank Lampard and Coventry will be going into it absolutely believing that they can turn over Ipswich. Now, this is a team that last season came incredibly close to getting to the FA Cup final. There's no doubt how they will approach this one up against an Ipswich side who, under Kieran McKenna, we've seen loads and loads and loads of games cover this over 4.5 goal line. Most recently, we saw them being beaten 6-0 by Man City and being beaten 4-1 by Liverpool. They're not at Premier League level, obviously defensively the best, and I think Coventry should have the attacking tools to cause them some issues. And we know that certainly last season in the Championship, Kieran McKenna's Ipswich side were incredibly good at creating opportunities and had a lot of high scoring games themselves. AK bets have boosted the price of Riley Goffey's over 4.5 double to 25-1, so you can find that on the specials section under football on AK bets. Oh, you look exhausted.
I was just thinking that 25-1, that'll win.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
Who'll be laughing then?
Can you recap your bets for the listeners, please?
Yeah, so my nap is Bradford City to win to 0 at 6-4 home to Harrogate. And my next best is Carlisle United 13-8 draw no bet at Grimsby. 2 scorers, half a point each, Luke McNally and Rob Dickey for Bristol City. Reading, the long shot away to Huddersfield, and my over 4.5 selection in the double is Exeter v Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, Coventry Ipswich makes up the 25-1 boosted over 4.5 double. My nap is Sunderland -1 at 6-4 at home to Watford. Sorry, Dave. Bristol City at 10-11 at home to... It is 10-11. There we go. 10-11 at home to Swansea is my next best. Josh March, 9-2 anytime for Harrogate away at Bradford, taking on Goffey's nap. And then Birmingham to beat Newcastle at 5-1. I'd also look at the to qualify and draw no bet markets and everything else in that one. For the purpose of this, my long shot is Birmingham at 5-1. Thank you to Goffey for taking the time to replace Ali. Ali will be back next week for another betting show. So we will see you then. In the meantime, make sure you sign up to AK Bets. As I say, they do look after you guys, the listeners and watchers, viewers, I should say, with the best prices. They push them out as far as they can go. And at the time of recording, they're often the best in the market. Although prices are subject to change, and that might be different by the time you get around to consuming this content. But check them out, and remember that there are risks associated with gambling. Check out begambleaware.org if you'd like to read up on those risks. Please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly. Have a great weekend and enjoy the football. Go well.